Hey, I'm some nobody, and in recent years, I feel like video game adaptations have gone from guaranteed to be terrible to more of a mixed bag. That's not to say that terrible adaptations don't still exist. Resident Evil has been consistently getting live action movies and TV shows for the last 20 years, and they've never gotten it right, not even once. You had the Borderlands movie last year, which was about as good as that franchise deserves, and then you had the Halo TV series, which just straight up hated the Halo series. But there are some good video game adaptations out there. The Sonic movies, Detective Pikachu, the Fallout TV show, the first 12 episodes of the Castlevania animated series. It's clear that people who actually appreciate the source material have infiltrated Hollywood, and when we find you, you will be compromised to a permanent end. But those other franchises mean nothing to me. Let's talk about Yakuza. All things considered, Yakuza fans were pretty lucky in the realm of adaptations. Like, the Amazon show misses the mark by a wide margin, really isn't a great adaptation, but it's not offensively bad. It isn't gonna damage the reputation of the franchise. Like Devil May Cry fans, I'm sorry, you guys are cooked. People are gonna think your franchise is nothing but wacky Reddit memes for the rest of your days. Comparatively speaking, we got off pretty easy with the Amazon show being not terrible, even if it's not a good adaptation. Jumping to another live-action adaptation, the Yakuza stage play is an absolute delight. Then you have the 2007 Takashi Miike Like a Dragon movie, which is beloved by most of the fandom, but for me to give my true opinion on it, I'm gonna have to turn to a fat pedophile for a second.
I mean, it's alright, like, overrated as fuck in my opinion.
Listen, Kishitani Goro is absolutely fantastic as Majima in that movie, and Majima is the best part of the movie. But otherwise, it's really not a good adaptation of Yakuza 1. It's very stylish, it jumps all around Kamurocho, and Kamurocho itself is really the main focal point of the movie. But that means that Kiryu and Haruka's story is just one of many different plots going on, and it really doesn't get the attention it deserves. I like the movie, but it's really just because of how good Kishitani's Majima performance is. So again, I'd say that the Yakuza fans, we've gotten off pretty easy in terms of live-action adaptations. But they all have some kind of caveat to it. You'd think it'd be pretty easy to adapt Yakuza because it's already so cinematic, the games do most of the work for you. But we still don't have an adaptation that absolutely knocks it out of the park. But with the movies I'm going to tell you about today, I think we can get pretty close. These are all movies that I watched and I thought to myself, this feels a lot like Yakuza. That could just be the Yakuza brain rot talking and the fact that a lot of Asian filmmaking has had a huge influence on the Yakuza series. Yakuza 3 and 6 are clearly meant to be Takeshi Kitano films to the point that Takeshi Kitano is in Yakuza 6. But these are just some movies I've watched that gave me a Yakuza vibe in some shape or form. I'm gonna tell you a bit about them, tell you where that Yakuza vibe comes from, and I'm not gonna spoil them because I want you to go watch them. I'm gonna go over these in the order that I saw them, and it should go without saying most of these are going to be crime movies, but one of them is going to be a bit of a head scratcher. First movie we're going to talk about stars an actor that I need to see in the next Like a Dragon game. This dude was built to run the Jingwon Mafia.
좋은 말로 자수시키는 건데 그게 무슨 수사야? 너 뭐야? 까불인데요? 까불고 있어. 똑바로 얘기 안 하고 뒤지는 거야, 알았어?
The Roundup is a very interesting movie. It's one that I decided to watch because the short synopsis just sounded like a Yakuza plot. And I've been a big fan of the lead actor Ma Dong-seok ever since I saw him as the coolest guy ever in Train to Busan. What makes it interesting is that it's the second movie in a series, but all the sequels following the Roundup are named after the Roundup. The first movie's called The Outlaws, and it was released in 2017, but following the release and success of the Roundup in 2022, the two sequels are called The Roundup No Way Out and The Roundup Punishment. In Korea, every movie in this series is just called Crime City, with the sequels being Crime City 2, 3, and 4. I didn't know any of that before I watched the movie, and you'd think jumping in on the second movie of a franchise would leave you confused, but it really didn't. Every character just slid into their roles in the movie and felt very natural. Even when one of the villains from the previous movie showed up, it didn't throw me for a loop. Without the context of the first movie, he just feels like an old contact that our character gets information from sometimes. This is one of the things that really adds to the Yakuza feel for this movie series, with each installment being a self-contained story where a new conspiracy crops up and our main character has to step in to put a stop to it. But instead of Kiryu stepping in to protect the Tojo clan despite the fact he does not fuck with them anymore, it's Lieutenant Ma stepping up to solve cases. Speaking of Lieutenant Ma, he is pretty fucking cool. He's even got a nickname just like an RGG protagonist, the Beast Cop. Now obviously Ma Dong-seok is built like an absolute tank, but that nickname is for more than just his physique. His only real game plan when it comes to apprehending criminals is I'm just gonna walk in and kick this guy's ass. And since he works in the major crimes unit, that means he's pulling up the crime scenes with murderers and armed criminals and saying, nah, I'm gonna 1v1 them. That's one of my favorite things about a lot of the Yakuza protagonists is that they very rarely take a roundabout approach to do anything. They'll usually just walk right through whoever's in their way. The actual story of the Roundup has Lieutenant Ma and his captain go to Vietnam to extradite a Korean suspect back to Korea, and they stumble upon a much bigger plot. A guy named Kang has been kidnapping and murdering Korean tourists, then holding them for ransom even though they're already dead. And Lieutenant Ma takes it upon himself to operate outside his jurisdiction to bring Kang to justice. This movie's vibe is almost identical to Yakuza's. It feels like what would happen if RGG decided to make a game about a cop. It's got hard-hitting action, a perfect sprinkling of comedy here and there, the vibe is absolutely on point, and above all else, it's got hype moments and aura. I wish I could tell you guys all about the final fight scene, but to avoid spoilers, all I can really say is that me and my friends were losing our minds over it. It kicked so much ass. Now this next movie I'm going to talk about is one that I decided to check out simply because the cover image had a Hanya mask, and that's a Majima reference, brother. Demon City is a movie that belongs to the subgenre of action movies that I like to call the revenge page. One of those movies like John Wick or Kill Bill where the main character goes on a revenge-fueled rampage. The guy going on a rampage in Demon City is a hitman named Shuhei Sakata. He specializes in bladed weaponry, with his signature weapon being this crazy cleaver that's on the poster. In the manga that the movie's based on, Onigoroshi, his signature weapon is a battle axe. So it should be pretty obvious this movie gets bloody and brutal. And I'm not going to mention the manga again. I wasn't going to mention it the first time, but if I didn't, I knew for a fact somebody would be in the comments trying to tell me that it exists. Regardless, for his last job as a hitman, Sakata wipes out all of the Yakuza in town so he can retire and be a family guy. But for trying to steal Peter Griffin's gimmick, 5 masked men break into his house, kill his wife and daughter, and shoot him in the head. Now, at this point, you should be sitting there thinking, this doesn't really sound like Yakuza, and you'd be right. What made this movie feel like Yakuza to me wasn't exactly the premise, it was the villains. Who these masked men are and their motivations are revealed pretty early on in the movie, but for now I'll just say they are men in positions of power that sought power in the underworld. So they used Sakata to wipe out all the competition, then tried to get rid of him and his family. But Sakata survives the headshot, is blamed for murdering his family, and spends the next 12 years in the medical joint, which makes him a fucking pussy. But they eventually let him go because getting shot in the head made him comatose, and the prison doesn't want to pay to keep him alive anymore. Things get really crazy after that, but I'm not going to go into great detail. The important part is conspiracies are revealed, there are twists, there are turns, there are fake outs. At one point, Sakata goes to talk to a police officer that used to give him information, and I pointed at the screen and said, oh, it's Date. And then the finale of the movie has Sakata solo charging the bad guy's tower hideout and fighting his way from the bottom of the tower to the top where he fights the final boss. And his cop friend even comes through at a clutch time just like Date would've. Despite the initial premise, the movie really does feel like a Yakuza plot if an absolute demon was the main character. It's a fun movie. There's even a little part where he eats a snack and it functions like a healing item. Now this next movie is definitely the oddest ball on the court, and it doesn't really feel like Yakuza until the third act, but then it really feels like Yakuza. Rampant, released in 2018, is a South Korean zombie movie that takes place during the Chosun Dynasty, probably somewhere in the late 15th century, considering rifles are a pretty big plot point. I know that doesn't exactly sound like Yakuza, it kinda sounds like a combination of multiple Yakuza spin-offs, like if you mixed Yakuza Dead Souls with Like a Dragon Ishin or Kenzan. But even looking at it from that perspective, I'd say it's a stretch to say the whole movie feels like Yakuza. Now, much like Demon City, Rampant's Yakuza feel comes almost entirely from its antagonist. The main conflict of Rampant isn't actually humans versus zombies, humans fighting for survival, it's a political conflict, where the main antagonist is constantly manipulating and plotting against the king so he can overthrow and rule the nation. Like, the movie starts with one of his schemes leading to the death of the heir to the throne, and then that scheme leads to him discovering all the rifles that the Europeans brought over and the demonic plague they brought over, and he uses both of those aspects in his future schemes. Now, there are a lot of scheming and manipulative villains out there, but not all of them are Yakuza villains. The reason I say this guy's a Yakuza villain is because of what happens in the third act. I'm not going to say exactly what happens because, again, spoiler free, but what I am going to tell you is that out of nowhere, the antagonist gets an insane amount of aura and becomes an absolute beast in a fight. And then the finale to this period piece zombie movie has our main character leading a solo siege on what is basically a tower. Like, it's the palace, but it might as well be a skyscraper. And yes, of course, the final battle of the movie does take place on the roof of the tower, and I was losing my fucking mind. I can't think of a single other zombie movie that has this amount of hype moments and aura. Honestly, when I looked up this movie further, I was so sad to find out that it bombed at the box office. I think this movie kicks ass even if you aren't afflicted with Yakuza brain rot. But moving on, the last movie we'll be talking about today was released in 2022 and it's called Bad City, and there's something that's been bothering me about it. The main character, Detective Terada, there's something familiar about him. I feel like I know him from somewhere. Wait a second. Yeah, Bad City stars Hitoshi Ozawa, who you probably know as Kuze from Yakuza 0. But even if that connection wasn't there, the amount of parallels you could draw between Bad City and the average Yakuza plot are staggering. Like, the main antagonist of this movie is the head of this big conglomerate that's now running for mayor and working with a member of the Korean mafia to collude against the Yakuza. And the reason he's working against the Yakuza is because they're in the way of him buying up property in the West District and building a casino and resort. The main character, Terada, is a guy that's doing time in prison for a murder he didn't commit, and he's brought out of prison to be a part of a secret police task force to collect evidence on everything I just explained. And then there's this whole dynamic between him and the Don of the Korean mafia because her son is the person Terada was accused of killing. There's a scene between the two of them where when it happened, I told my friends that's a cutscene they would end a chapter on in a Yakuza game. And then there were so many twists and turns and flashbacks and parts of the conspiracy revealed and then flashbacks that show more information than earlier flashbacks. It felt like I was watching the cutscenes of a Yakuza game. The member of the Korean mafia that's working with the mayoral candidate has this henchman that never says a word the entire movie and just chews a toothpick the entire time. But he's an absolute monster in a fight and he quick steps bullets constantly. Definitely that one boss you fight in every act of the game. Bad City even pulls off one of my favorite tropes from Yakuza, where the guy you beat up in the first act winds up your ally in the third. There's this character named Murata who's my fucking goat. Early on in the movie, Terada and his unit intercept him and his Yakuza family while they're on their way to avenge their boss that was assassinated at the beginning of the movie. They beat his ass and interrogate him, but because Terada winds up giving him the iggy on what's actually going on, he helps him out a few times throughout the movie, and he winds up agreeing to help them in the finale so he gets to be part of the Yakuza 4 moment where they aura farm outside of a bar. And I don't want to give too much of the finale away because, again, spoiler free, but I have to mention that Murata is the MVP during it. It's a very traditional Yakuza finale, big brawl with a bunch of guys into mini boss fight into final boss fight. And Murata is the only guy I have ever seen pull the "you guys go ahead, I'll hold them off" twice in the same finale. I know who my GOAT is, do you? I mentioned earlier that the Roundup had a perfect Yakuza vibe, but Bad City is bar for bar. I can't tell you any of what happens after Terada defeats the final boss, but everything that follows is like exactly how a Yakuza game's epilogue plays out. To the point that I'd say the only thing that's missing is Terada getting stabbed or shot right at the end so they could pretend he died until the next game brings him back. But those are the 4 movies I've seen that felt the most like Yakuza, and interestingly enough, 3 out of 4 of them had City in the name. Crime City, Demon City, Bad City. I'm sure this would have been called Rampant City if cities existed back then. I really enjoyed all of these movies, and they tickled that special lump in my brain that vaguely looks like a dragon. And if you've got a similar lump and you don't want to follow your doctor's advice about it either, I'd recommend you check all of them out. That's all I got for now, but don't ever think you're safe from me. When you least expect it, I will come back.